Lovejoy is a candidate for the Manassas City Council. He is an incumbent, and he joins us on Potomac Local News. Ian, thanks for coming on.
Uriah, it's a pleasure to have you. Not a lot of people are covering races this year at the local level, so we're glad to see somebody doing it.
Well, thank you. That's why we're here, and we certainly appreciate that. Flattery will get you everywhere. You are no stranger to the City Council or the issues in Manassas. You have been on you'll be running for your third term. Is that correct on the City Council?
That's correct, yeah.
And you also made a bid for a statewide office last year.
Delegate,
not
local,
statewide,
still,
but it would be, a state level office.
A state level office, that's
state
correct.
Level office, I should
Right.
say. So as you canvass the city this year, what are the issues? What are people saying as you knock on the door?
Like you would imagine, it's COVID response, it's the economy, it's making sure everybody, if somebody isn't affected economically by COVID, they know a neighbor who is, or they have a loved one who is. In the city of Manassas, we're fortunate that the unemployment rate has ticked down to 6%, but that's still 3 times higher than it was pre-COVID. So when you're at the grocery store and you walk by 20 people, 2 of them don't have jobs right now, and that's pretty big for our city. So I think people are wanting to see the economy stabilize. I think people are happy with the trajectory it's on. They could do without the roller coaster part. They just want a nice steady up. And I think that the city council's, obligations over the next coming years is going to be helping with recovery and making sure we're creating an environment where the economy can flourish when it's ready to.
The economy again was at 14% unemployment, so we've seen it track back down
Nationally, yes.
to where it is now. Manassas. I've written countless stories, it seems, over the past 3 to 4 years about the windfall Manassas has seen in terms of business expansion. Micron being the largest private partnership in modern history in Virginia. But a lot of the talk has been about small businesses.
Right.
A lot of the talk is about getting people back to work, whether they are in government contracting, whether they are in restaurants, which the city has many of. Is there one sort of silver bullet solution to this to get the city back on an economic track? What do you think?
There's no single solution because, like you pointed out, each industry is a little bit different. Every industry is suffering in a different way because of COVID. I think that we've tried to have instead of a cookie cutter response to helping our businesses, I think we've tried to come up with programs that can be tailored and that can meet the needs of different types of businesses and different industries. Just recently, Council authorized economic development to bring back another round of grants for businesses, which is just cash, but also a parallel program where we will match any marketing money that local businesses are going to put out for their own efforts. Because if all the businesses are marketing, they're invariably going to help each other. You can't get to one business in the city without passing by a bunch of others. So the city will do a 2-to-1 grant match for any marketing that people are doing, as well as a pure cash grant for businesses that have suffered under COVID. And so that allows, a restaurant can use the cash grant to buy heaters for the winter, and a retail place can use the other grant to the marketing grant to market their Christmas sales, and vice versa. So it allows, I think that we're trying to have a diverse series of responses to reflect our diverse businesses.
We've seen the city grow exponentially over the past few years in terms of business, and residents are moving there too. Is there one thing in your estimation that the pandemic has changed? Do you think the pandemic, as the economy comes back to life, as they say, do you think though there is 1 or 2 things that will have been forever changed because of the pandemic in the city?
I think that it's forced businesses to adapt faster and to become more agile and to realize what they are capable of. It's not until you have the bedrock of your economy kicked out from under you and you have to adapt that you realize what you can truly get through. So I think we're going to see innovation, and I think that we're going to see the adaptability of our businesses continue onward. You're going to see outdoor dining stay in a way that it hasn't in the past. I think that you're going to see a rebounded appreciation for local small businesses. I think people get tired of going to fast food. People get tired of ordering off of Amazon. People realize what they've missed as these businesses were shut down. And I think there's going to be a renewed sense of vigor and love of our local businesses. So I'm a half glass full guy. I think that we're going to see positives. If we can get over the economic piece, if we can get these businesses back open to full steam, I think we're going to see positive innovations out of all this in the long run.
I want to switch now to politics and party. In 2018, we saw the Democrats a major shift. The Democrats took over the control of the city council, whereas pretty much throughout history, the Republicans controlled the city council up until 2018. So, as you knock on doors this year and as you talk to voters, how much do party and politics factor into this race?
I've knocked a lot of doors. I've talked to a lot of voters, and this is true of when I ran in 2016. This is true of when I ran last year. This is true this year of this election. People are just tired of partisan hacks. They're tired of just spouting out what their party is without backing it up with their experience, without backing it up with their vision. And the people of Manassas are smart people. They know when they're voting for individuals who actually have experience and have a positive vision for our city versus people who are simply trying to sell them a political party and hope that they get it, hope to get elected just based on that. So I'm seeing the people I talk to are far more interested in about what we want to do with the community, where we see the city going, than any given political party. And I think that really, really shows. If your entire political plan is just what color your yard sign is, you're not going to fare very well. So,
And you are a Republican, and
I'm a Republican candidate,
you
absolutely.
are a Republican candidate, and do you have any indication on whether or not that even matters? I mean, as you talk to different people, you say they don't want a political hack, but I've talked to some candidates who say, I've gone to people's doors, I've identified myself as a Republican or as a Democrat, and they shut the door in my face. Have you experienced any of that?
Well, it happens. I mean, statistically, it's going to happen. But what I would say is, in this election cycle, it's happened maybe 3 to 6 times, and that's out of thousands of doors. So, that's my takeaway from reaching out to folks. Isn't an overwhelming dislike of any given political party or political ideation. They're interested in the individual. They're interested in the candidate. So, yes, that happens. It happens every year. It happens every cycle. And it's just a part of it. But I don't see it happening any more this year than it's happened in the past. And it's not happening more or less.
One of the stories that we wrote about earlier this year was the continued increase of property taxes in the city. And as you've pointed out many times, Manassas now has the second highest property tax rate in the state of Virginia, behind Manassas Park, your neighbor. And with that money, we've seen a robust capital improvements plan in place. We had only last month groundbreaking for a new police station. We've seen road improvement projects come along. Schools obviously need more money. But at this point, as we've seen taxes go up in the city about 4% every year, is that sustainable? And tell me, do you plan on continuing that trajectory?
That's an excellent question, and it's something that I don't think we talk about enough. The Commonwealth is littered with the graves of former cities that have reverted back to town status, cities that have reverted back to town or fully back absorbed into their county. There are failed cities in the Commonwealth, and we don't want to be a failed city. And the struggle that we have in Manassas is we are confined by our boundaries. We can't expand. You can't make the city any larger. So we're kind of stuck at 42,000 people and about 15,000 households. So how do you spread all this infrastructure and all these economic needs over a finite number of households and just a few people? And the question that we're going to be struggling with more and more is whether or not the economies of scale are going to finally catch up with us. I love our neighbors, Manassas Park, but they are a cautionary tale. They are the canary in the coal mine of what happens when you can't, your economies of scale don't actually allow you to effectively afford the basic needs of government. And the question that we don't necessarily have to ask this today, but in 5, 10, 15 years, there will be a council that is going to struggle with being able to still exist as a city and being able to raise the tax revenue that we need. So
it's fair to say that in Manassas Park's case, they made a lot of investments. They spent a lot of money on a very large community center, and then in the 2008 recession, the bill came due, and they didn't. It wasn't the easiest thing for them to pay the bills, so taxes went up in that city, and so it's fair to point that out.
So it's the 4%. We're a bit on autopilot. Every year, we're simply saying we're going to budget assuming 4% increase in revenue year over year over year over year. and whose income is going up by 4% every year. How many people are getting 4% more money every single year? And so there's a point at which we're so used to this diet of not diet, but we're so used to this meal of 4% increases that it gets harder and harder to say no to it. And in this last budget cycle, we were in the middle of the COVID recession. The economy is falling off from everyone, and we still raised pennies on the tax rate that was originally recommended by the city manager to sustain not only the 4%, but more. So I think that there's going to be a council at some point in the future that's going to be looking back at us and saying, cut us a break here. You've got to give us some capacity to work with. And I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but I mean, if you look, the city does a citizen satisfaction survey every 2 years, and like clockwork, what the citizens say, and we ask the citizens this question: if you want new stuff, how do you want it paid for? It's a very straightforward question. Do you want us to raise taxes? Do you want us to reprioritize the money we already have? How do you want us to pay for new things in this city? And overwhelmingly, it's always either don't do new things or shuffle around the money you already have. The minority, only 1 in 3 Manassas residents actually say, raise my taxes to enhance services. 1 in 3. And that's in the education category. Like, it's across all these different categories. And so every other category trends worse. And so the citizens are overwhelmingly communicating that they want the council to do what they do at their own homes, which is reprioritize our budgets, prioritize the things that are important, but lay off the tax increases. And I think that's only going to get harder and harder on people as we go forward.
So you're saying that the taxpayer, when asked, they don't have problems paying more in taxes to pay for education, but for other things.
Well, actually, even in education, only 1 in 3 want additional tax revenue. That's like the strongest category. The strongest advocates for more tax revenue is the education category, but it's still only 33%.
So here's the hard question.
Yeah.
Where do you shuffle? Who do you take from what source and what area and put to something else? I mean, first of all, have you had that discussion? And if so, how does that begin? How do you start that?
We don't get deep into that discussion because usually council, when we give the city manager budget guidance, we basically say 4%. And the council has, in my tenure, never said to the city manager, show us a budget that keeps it flat. Show us a budget that does 1% or 2%. Let us see what that looks like and let us make some hard decisions. We never even play with it. There aren't 4 votes to even go down that road to start seeing what it looks like. But to answer your question, I think you start by things like the South Grant streetscape project, which is $4 million, which is roughly a penny on the tax rate.
Which is a project to take a 4-lane road and reduce it down to essentially a 2-lane road with some nice, pretty streetscaping to go along on just south of downtown.
That is correct. And so that's an example of, do we need for a $4 million streetscape program that cost about a penny on the tax rate forever? That penny has to be there forever to pay for that bonded debt for 30 years. Do we need that, or do we need a new Jenny Dean school? Or do we need other parts of the capital improvement program? So I think you start to see where that is an issue, stuff like that. So there's a penny right there that theoretically could be shuffled around. Because I guarantee you, we're probably going to do that project, and then it's going to come time to build a new Jenny Dean Elementary, and we're going to be reliant hugely on tax increases in order to fund it. We're going to want that penny, but we're not going to have it anymore because we've already spent it on the South Grant project. But that would be an example of something that we could do. And then the rest is, again, the council has to have the wherewithal to say, show us 2 scenarios, show us a flat tax bill, show us a 4%, let council make some decisions in between.
It's so interesting that you brought up the idea of a failed city, because this year we watched Martinsville revert from being a city. Martinsville, obviously in the southern part of the state near North Carolina, reverting from a city back to a town, which then puts it in the county in which it's located in. So in Prince William County, you have various towns: Dumfries, Haymarket, Quantico, Occoquan, all considered to be a part of the county, whereas Manassas City and Manassas Park City are very independent. Is that a real threat? Is that something that is even being discussed at this point, or at what point does a city reach a point where they have to even entertain, as Martinsville did, those conversations?
It's not a conversation right now. It's not on the horizon right now. But Martinsville, if it had made different decisions 10 years ago, could it have survived as a city? And that's the question we have to be asking. We don't want to be sitting at a council meeting, truly having this conversation, We don't want to get that close, but I don't see how, if we're going to continue the 4%, 4% increase. I mean, that means your tax bill is going to double in 10 years or so if you do the math on compounded interest, 10 or 15 years. So can we have to make decisions today that slow that curve so that future councils aren't stuck with the decision. And, I don't want to spook people. It's not something we're talking about today or tomorrow, but how we do this budgeting and how we keep adding a percentage to the base, it is something that future councils are really going to be stuck with if it's something that we continue.
Ian Lovejoy is a candidate for the Manassas City Council. We thank you so much for coming on Potomac Local News today and talking about the campaign.
An absolute pleasure, sir. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Voters go out to the polls on November 3rd. Thanks for joining us.